Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a regular meeting of the Madera County Board of Supervisors. Today is Tuesday, October 8th, 2019. Is there any additions to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, no additions. However, on the consent calendar, we will be pulling item H.
H?
Yes, H. That's doc number 5622, Department of Economic Development Department.
Okay, so that's being pulled per...
Per the department's request.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, so can you please read into the record the items on closed session?
Yes, Chairman, members of the board. On the agenda, there are 5 items. However, there's no items to discuss under labor negotiations, and so I'll read the remaining 4 items. The first 2 were moved from the last meeting because the board didn't discuss them in closed session. They're real property negotiations under Government Code Section 54956.0. The assessor's parcel number for one of the properties is 047070017, and the address for the and the assessor parcel number for the other property is 049085022. Your agency negotiator is Eric Fleming. The negotiating party is Sonoyan Family Partnership. Under negotiation is price, terms, and conditions of sale, and the negotiating party for the second real property item is State Center Community College District. Under negotiations is price, terms, and conditions of sale. You have one conference with your legal counsel under anticipated litigation, a decision whether to initiate litigation under Government Code 54956.9, and an existing litigation in the matter Anita Ross versus the County of Madera under Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D1. Thank you.
Is there any public comment regarding any item on the closed session agenda? Seeing none, I'll call close to the public comment portion, and we will go to the back. I need to figure out what to say. I never want to say adjourn, retire. Go to the back. Go to the back. Retire. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Madera County Board of Supervisors meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 8th. Time is 10:02. Supervisor Poitras is going to be having to leave at about 10:30 to go up and advocate for us at the California State Transportation Authority as they're trying to take away funding. And of course, they're trying to take it from Madera County. So you'll be leaving at 10:30. So we'll do some things a little bit out of order just so that we can get the two items that need 4 votes required. County Council, was there anything to report out of closed session?
Chairman, there are no reportable actions from today's closed session.
All right, and we're going to open and close the meeting today. Anybody have anybody in memory of? This one is not in memory of, but I would like to open in honor of Zeke Bonner. Rhonda Cargill welcomed a new grandson just last week, so I'd like to open in his honor.
He's a cutie.
He is. All right, our invocation will be done by Pastor Mike Farmer. And Sheriff, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today?
Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, you are so good to us, so kind. You shower your blessings down on us, even though we don't deserve it. We thank you. Lord, I thank you for this day. I thank you for this group of people here, Lord, as they look out for our interests here in this county. I ask that you be with them, guide them in their discussion, their thoughts, and in their decisions, Lord. And may everything that is said and done bring glory and honor to your name. Amen.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comment?
Public comment. The first 15 minutes of each regular session are set aside for members of the public to address the board on any matter under the jurisdiction of the board but not appearing on the agenda. The board will not take action on any items presented under public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone addressing the board is asked to print their name clearly on the speaker sheet at the podium and state their name and county of residence for the record.
Good morning. My name is Ron Montoya out of Madera County, a couple miles away. I'm here to thank the Friends of Madera Animal Shelter for all that they've done and continue to do. Learning about these abrupt changes is alarming, and it's frightening because the Friends of Madera Animal Shelter appears to be the only ones in Madera County doing something that needs to be done with this crisis of animals in our community. They don't get any help from the city, and now they're faced with a proclamation, okay? It's sad, and by looking at those photos as I walked in, how many board of supervisors have been over there trying to collect vouchers and educating the community on what these vouchers are? By taking the photos of yourself and putting the emblem of Friends of Madera Animal Shelter, it's saddening. And I think trying to pull the wool over our eyes, and I know, do you think the public is ignorant? You're talking to a gentleman that's probably rescued about 35 to 37 feral cats, spay and neuter in this community, educated others, a manager at McDonald's, Save Mart. Because of the hardworking women at the Friends of Madera Animal Shelter, they created a platform of kindness. And then to pose your photos in Friends of Madera Animal Shelter, it's a slap in the face, in my opinion. It's going to be an interesting election year. I'm going to be out going door to door for people who don't allow for transparency for these decisions. It would be mindful to our community and the animals to have open forums, discussions with the community on what's at stake. This Friends of Madera Animal Shelter put Madera on the map. They don't get any help from the city, and it's a city's problem. It's a shame that there's no city council member here. It's sad, because it's a city's problem. And what they have done, it's priceless. And they are the definition of kindness. And those photos just kind of really broke the camel's back for me this morning. But it would be nice for you guys to go and see what they do on a daily basis. Come out with me on a Friday night and trap animals. Right by Schottler's Tire. I'm educating Chief Lawson. His police officers are very receptive. Matter of fact, I got pulled over in my black Honda. What are you doing? I'm trapping animals. I'm rescuing these feral cats. And you know what? He was thankful for what I was doing. And because of these vouchers, it's because of the Friends of Madera Animal Shelter. Thanks.
Christina Beckstead, Madera County Farm Bureau. Just wanted to take a moment to invite everyone to our annual Ag United Harvest celebration and annual meeting. It will be on October 27th. That's a Sunday from 4:30 to 9 o'clock at Chowchilla Fairgrounds. This year, our special guests are Ray Appleton and Jimmy J.J. Walker. It will be a fantastic dinner, prime rib served by Bright's Catering. For those of you that have attended in the past, you know how delicious everything turns out. There'll be celebrity dessert auction with desserts from our wonderful Board of Supervisors, as well as some other dignitaries, including the sheriff who's present and some of our city councilmen. And there will also be a silent auction. And I have tickets on me now, or you can get them at the Farm Bureau. They're $60 in advance or $75 at the door, and it should be a dynamite time.
That was good. Well done.
Good morning, Board. Rick Dupree, Probation Department. I'm here representing the CCP, the Community Corrections Partnership. We are announcing today the release of our first and hopefully annual grant program. This first year grant program is going to be a 9-month program just because we're a little late in the way we want to do our grant cycle. So it's going to be only $75,000 this year, but annually it'll be $100,000 from up to 1 to 10 successful applicants. The deadline for grant application is November 22nd, 5 p.m. It is the eligible applicants are non-public sector, nonprofit, community-based organization, and the grants applications have to serve both incarcerated or released offenders and their family members or victims of crime, and should address one or more of the following challenges: housing, employment, marriage and relationship, family connections, parenting, substance abuse, mental health, education, literacy, domestic violence, and mentoring community victim support. So anyway, we'll be posting this on the county website, probation website, all the Community Correction Partnership members' websites, and hopefully get something out of the media. So if you know of any nonprofit, non-public sector, community-based organization that have a program or programs that help offenders, especially those AB 109 offenders, please recommend that they apply for this grant. Okay? Thank you.
My name is Judy Wedding, and I'm with Friends of Madera Animal Shelter. I just want to say you don't know the work we have put into this to save the animals. I know people think animals, not people. But they have souls too, they have feelings, they hurt, they bleed. We do everything we can, all for free. And Superintendent Rogers, I really didn't care for your smirking while the gentleman was up here. You didn't.
My facial expressions are not subject of discussion.
You didn't even look at him.
You know what? Okay.
Well, you didn't
You're
smirk
entitled to your
when we
opinion.
were at Chowchilla helping your group. You were very happy to see us.
I smirked because there's no information for what he's saying. I adopted my animal.
Well, I'm glad you did, but your face
And I
told
paid
us
for
a
it, too.
different story.
Well, I don't like being lied to.
You have never been lied to by our group.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. can't write and talk at the same time.
I don't suppose that you folks even know who I am. Name is Jack Fry. I have my son Tom Fry with me, and and my wife and my daughter-in-law and my grandson are the Fry Family Trust, which is a whole bunch of different things. And one of them is the Adams Trust, which is an education trust. And to begin with, I want to thank you gentlemen for making me the Senior Farmer of the Year a couple months ago. Thank you very much from the depth of my heart. That's an honor that I never expected, but I'll treasure it. I'm only 92 now, but God has spoken to me rather clearly a number of times. And he says, you're still here for a reason. That reason is conservation in all of its terms and responsibility of us. And that responsibility today I want to stress to you folks, because you sit in a point in Madera County that is absolutely essential to what happens in Madera County in the future. And the future is still in front of us. God hasn't said it's time to go yet. He hasn't told me that either. So I will be back to talk to you a little bit later. But what I'm concerned with today is our aquifer is so depleted by intentional mistakes that we have made. And we're part of that. And I think you see what this is.
Your straws.
You know what that is? Tom, could you distribute that around? Give each member one of them, and be sure the lawyer and the secretary get one.
You're gonna make
too.
me work no matter what I do.
Those are deep straws. Deep straws are the deep wells that have decimated Chowchilla, Madera County water system. We have water that used to be in the ground that doesn't get to the ground anymore because our canals could not have been more carefully designed to exclude the aquifer of Madera County and Fresno County, Kings County, Tulare County, all the ones that represent the valley of the San Joaquin. If that has been designed by the devil, it couldn't have been any better designed, because our water goes straight over to the aqueduct and straight down the Friant Kern Canal and to the same extent the Friant Madera Canal. It is excluded from our aquifer because it's a barrier. And the water that we are given goes through our water districts. And it comes to us because somebody set the price so high that everybody else seems to think they have to pump the water out of the aquifer. Well, we can't keep doing it. We've come to a limit, and we want you to set those limits. And today, I see from the agenda that we got a number of things on it that we're very much in favor of, and we will support you to the bitter end. The Fry Family Trust is going to be with you all the way, and that goes for things like Farm Bureau and NRCS, Conservation Service, and all the way back to me. And we'll be with you all the way. Now, Tom's probably got a couple of things he wants to say to you, too.
Thank you, Jack.
Sorry it took so long. Yeah, the point he's trying to get to is we need your support to make sure that we get, when we have the available water like we've had this year, it doesn't continue on out to the ocean without going through our district so we can get some recharge going. But to have people, some of our own neighbors, still pumping water when they have canal water right beside them, and they have the facilities to pump that water out of the canal. The usage in the canal system is low this year, where it should be high. People are thinking it's cheaper or better to use the pump water. And we're trying to, our district is putting water in the ground, but it's going out at a faster rate. And that's where we need to get some real help getting that solved, and that's where we're at.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Diana Frazier, and I'm with the Friends of Madera Animal Shelter. I would just like to make a quick statement. When I came here from the Bay Area 12 years ago into the Madera County, I was appalled at the lack of spaying and neutering, the overpopulation of the animals here, that I became a foster for the Madera shelter. And still, the youth rate was like 85%. It was absolutely atrocious to watch that many animals lose their lives. Friends of Madera Animal Shelter came in, and over the last 7 years that I've been working for them, we have turned the euthanization rate around dramatically. We're into spaying and neutering. I don't know how you guys feel about animals, but I can tell you, when you talk about praying to God, I use the power of prayer. And I've seen these animals and their lives change dramatically. I'm the transport driver. I drive animals daily for spay and neutering, which is reducing the overpopulation, which in all reality, there has been reports of rabies here. Just think if an animal, a cat or a dog, picks up rabies and what a threat that would be to the human safety. Spaying and neutering is everything. People get overpopulated with animals that can no longer afford to feed them. They're thrown out like trash in this valley. The Bay Area doesn't have that. The Bay Area is into spaying and neutering and education. And without the support of the Friends of Madera Animal Shelter, that shelter is not going to be able to survive. We have poured our blood, sweat, tears, and they've poured their finances into churning this around. May God bless each and every one of you in your decision. We thank you for your time.
Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll call close to the public comment portion, and we'll go to the consent calendar. Any items any supervisor would like to have pulled? Seeing none, I'll call, or is there any public comment on any consent calendar item? Okay, seeing none, I'll call
Sure.
close to the.
I just wanted to reiterate that item H is being pulled from the consent calendar
Yes.
per the department's request.
Okay,
I move to approve pulling item H.
with polling item H?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a, was that a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Call for the vote. Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 4-0, one absent.
All right, we're going to go to 7C. That's the last one that has 4 votes required.
7C, County Administration Department, Central Garage, Sheriff's Vehicles Lease. 1, discussion and consideration to adopt a resolution approving lease financing for the acquisition of vehicles for the Sheriff's Office and authorizing the County Administrative Officer or his designee to execute and deliver the lease and related documents on behalf of the county. 2, discussion and consideration of approval of receipt of unanticipated revenue number 2019-034 in the amount of $190,500, funds derived from the use of fund balance to be appropriated to Central Garage, equipment and retire capital leases for lease of sheriff vehicles and the purchase of necessary equipment, fiscal year 2019 to 2020. 4 votes required.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Joel Begay, County Administrative Office. With me is Steve Onflue, Central Garage. The item before you today is to seek authorization to utilize our master lease with Opus Bank, which we use to finance our fire trucks in order to finance sheriff vehicles for a much shorter term of 3 years. Currently, we purchase vehicles outright, which has based on the replacement mileage, we've cycled those vehicles every 3 years. After working with Central Garage and the Sheriff's Office, and taking into consideration the fund balance in the replacement fund of the Central Garage, it was determined that it would be more advantageous to lease purchase the sheriff vehicles, both one, to let the replacement fund recover and be sustainable in the long term. It has been depleted during the recession when we had to keep rates low. It's on its way up. It's not where we want it to be yet. Switching to a lease purchase when interest rates are low helps us kickstart that process and get us back to a more sustainable level. And the second recommended action is for a budget adjustment to add 4 vehicles in addition to those approved in the budget. After reviewing with the Sheriff's Office with the filling of new positions and filling of the funded positions in the Sheriff's, there's a need to right-size their fleet, and these 4 vehicles were determined after the budget was adopted. And with that, we're available for any questions.
Is there any questions? Any public comment regarding this item? See none, I'll call close to the public comment portion, bring it back to the board for action.
Motion to approve. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Call for the vote. Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 4-0, 1 absent.
All right. Thank you. 7A.
7A, presentation, Board of Supervisors Department, District Number 1. Presentation of proclamation to the Friends of Madera Animal Shelter in recognition of their tireless commitment in caring for the safety and well-being of animals in Madera County. Whereas during the course of human existence, there have been few occurrences that have stood the test of time and proven steady and reliable, such as the companionship of our animal friends. And whereas the Friends of Madera Animal Shelter is a nonprofit 501c3 organization formed in 2002, run by dedicated volunteers working tirelessly to support the education of responsible pet ownership. And whereas the Friends of Madera Animal Shelter have been in partnership with Madera County since its inception and have delivered over $5 million of goods and services to the county, such as providing rescue vans, shot clinic trailers, full-time workforce, and numerous volunteers for the betterment of animals. And whereas the Friends of Madera Animal Shelter is a valuable asset to the County of Madera in helping to control the pet population through spaying, neutering, and finding loving forever homes for abandoned and unwanted animals. A myriad of wonderful animal lovers have found it within themselves to care so deeply for the orphaned animals that they donate their time and money to care for innocent animals, not expecting anything in return. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Madera, State of California, does hereby recognize and honor the Friends of Madera Animal Shelter for their tireless commitment in caring for the safety and well-being of animals in Madera County.
Thank you. Obviously, from some of the public comment that were heard today, I called Velvet. I wanted to do something nice for all of you for what you have done for our community and what you've done for the animals within the community, thereby also helping the residents with it. I don't know what happened in between that, but this has been a partnership that I've cared about from my time on the city council to the time here. This last budget cycle for the second time now, we've doubled our spay and neuter funding within the county, and it's because of the education that I've received from a lot of you on how important it is, and that ounce of cure was worth a pound of, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And, this is a relationship that I think is vital to the success of the county as well as the success of our animal population. And, I'm hoping that this is the start of an even new and more robust dialogue between your organization and the county. And again, I don't know where it changed, but I'd like to hear and see what it is that we can do more.
Thank you. Thank you. Supervisor Frazier. My name is Velvet Rhodes. I'm the current president of Friends of Madera Animal Shelter. And unfortunately, you know, Brett, you're not the only one that sits up there. And as much as I cherish our relationship and you know, your standing in this community, there's other people that don't have the same feelings that you have that sit on this board and that sit in the county's positions. And so we accept this proclamation on behalf of the Friends with a heavy heart today, because I was here a month ago asking for a conversation between you men, and because we knew there was something shaking in the county as far as the animal shelter goes. And now that the word is out, our board member, and I don't know if you gentlemen know, but Kirsten Gross was the person who spearheaded the Friends of the Madera Animal Shelter in 2002. She knew that that the obstacles that the county had as far as funding and the building, the facility, et cetera, she was unable to save lives and to do what she considered humane and compassionate care of unwanted animals. And so that's why she spearheaded the Friends and a bunch of other menopausal women, if you will. And which I think, Mr. Rogers, you got a little taste of that today. But
No problem.
But without now knowing, in light of that Kirsten Gross will no longer be our shelter director, and I guess that was my biggest concern trying to reach out to you gentlemen over a month ago, is we had heard that. We had heard, and us not being involved in the conversation was very disheartening, because Kirsten has always been someone who brings people together. I mean, there's never been a volunteer that wasn't welcome through those doors of that shelter, and some are crazy. You know, some of us animal lovers, they have a problem with society, but Kirsten found a way to find the good in every single volunteer. And you became to where when you heard Kirsten Gross was on the phone, you knew that night you were going home with a litter of kittens or a dog with a broken leg or something. Anything that was possible, including taking home dozens of animals herself to get them out of the shelter, to get them in a safe, clean environment to where we could turn around and rehome all these animals. She has never stopped, which is very, we don't know where we're at now, Brett. We don't know our position as we have been doing it for 17 years. We are at the shelter. But now, with the unforeseen changes, not knowing who's going into her position, you're going to have unbelievable shoes to fill. But one thing is for sure, we are going to continue doing the Friends. We're going to continue doing the good work in this city, in this county, whether people appreciate us or not. We're going to keep doing it, because we don't do it for ourselves. We don't do it for you guys. We don't do it for anybody but the animals. And saving them and a little compassion goes a long way. And so with that, it's a puzzling time. I mean, it's a puzzling coincidence that after 17 years, we're receiving a proclamation within weeks of our fearless leader no longer going to be there, which was just unbelievable.
And I can, explain that. So when, after the last month, I had reached out to you, my office had reached out to you, and to set up that appointment, because I remembered it was on my calendar, and then you said you were going to go into a different direction and didn't want to have that. I'm trying to repair whatever rift or relationship wherever there is a breakdown in communication is where I'm trying to reach out through that. And,
Well,
and this was also, Kirsten's resignation came to a shock for me and for all of our board, and knowing what her role in starting the FMAS. This is as much for her personally as it is for anybody else as
I
well.
think we all know that that is not true. And I think we all know that she is very passionate about the work that she does. And maybe that is your understanding of it, Brett, but that is not a truth. Now, whether, I'm not here to speak for Kirsten Gross at all. I'm here to speak for the Friends of the Madera Animal Shelter. And I reached out to you, and in return, you set up a meeting with me. And I appreciate that you set up a meeting with me because no one else bothered to call me back. But it was out of our hands at that point, is now that we're aware of. And that's why I tried to reach out to the board to stand up for our side of it and to show you the truth and to explain our side of it and our partnership. But I never have since gotten an email for anyone other than you, Brett. I've never been asked by Eric Fleming, who I asked to sit down with and to go over our financials of what we've been supplying this county. But yet I did receive a phone call from you saying that you would like for us to have a proclamation after 17 years. It's just such a coincidence that after 17 years, within 2 weeks, we find out that our shelter director will no longer be there. And frankly, we don't know our status of where we're going to be in the future. We might not be out the shelter. We don't know. So just that not knowing is very anxious for everyone. But in your shoes that you guys are going to need to fill, I'm a statement that resonates with me is by Mahatma Gandhi. And he said, "The greatness of a nation and the moral progress is judged by the way they treat their animals." And please take away today the future of the animals of this county and think about that. And I want to thank you, gentlemen, for this proclamation today.
I'd like to share a comment.
All right, is there any public comment regarding the proclamation? Seeing none, I'll call close to the public comment portion of it, and I'll bring it down, or my best guess is you don't want to take a picture with us. So I can bring it to you, and
That's interesting.
Supervisor,
Yeah, I just wanted to say that my reaction earlier was a little bit more out of shock than anything, because I've been to the animal shelter. I've adopted an animal from the shelter. I've offered, and Kristen knows, I've emailed and offered to try and adopt or try to rescue animals that, and she's shaking her head yes back there. I have a good working relationship with Kristen and never have had an adverse day or a conversation with her at all. So I'm a little dismayed at the hostility that I feel. And so in response, I became a little irritated and upset. So that was my only response to that. And I apologize for getting upset, but it was simply out of pure shock at what was being said, because I've raised animals my whole life. I love animals. I treat my animals good. The picture you saw with me and the dog, I love that dog. He's a great dog, Thor. The lady I talked to at the shelter was very informative and helpful, and my wife and I were both very glad to get Thor, and I think he's very happy. We walk him regularly. He's really a neat dog, obedient, and so it's great to have animals in our lives. I raise chickens as well, and I've raised chickens, ducks, rabbits, cows my whole life, even pigs, and I think the Kristen had a cow recently. I was trying to figure out a way to get that cow into my neighborhood. I don't think my neighbors would have appreciated it, but I was trying to figure out a way to adopt him, but that didn't work out. Anyway, my point is, I think you do great work. I don't want you to feel that there's any adversity on my part to what you do. And I appreciate Kristen as well and what she's done, so.
Her
Kirsten,
name is
I'm
Kirsten.
sorry.
Yeah, she's your employee for 17, 18, 20 years. Kay Rhodes, ex-treasurer of the Friends of the Madera Animal Shelter. And it isn't that we feel you're hostile, Mr. Rogers, and you adopted one animal. Let's see, Velvet and I have 27 animals that we take care of that are not crated. Right. We have 4 horses that I've had for 8 years that went through the court system in Madera County that were starved out of North Fork. Right. I still have them. I feed them today. So good for you that you adopted an animal and you love animals. Sure. How many thousands and thousands of animals do you think we have saved since we started the Friends? It's in the multi-thousands, and we have rescued, last year alone, we sent 2,000 animals to Oregon and Washington because of Madera County not having a spay and neuter ordinance, not funding, not helping us. You gave us $100,000. In the 17 years we've been with the Friends, the county has written $500,000 worth of checks. $400,000 of that we earned ourselves by adopting out the animals in Madera County to the Bay Area, not in Madera County. And we got $250 to $300 for those dogs that we could buy all the medicine and the vaccines for the shelter for a number of years, pay for the vans, pay for our 3 employees. And you gave us $100,000 last December. You know how long that lasted us in spay and neuter? 5 months. $21,000 a month is what we spend in spay and neuter with no help, with $100,000 from the county who has a multi-million-dollar budget. Shame on you. I think we all have to work together if we're going to continue this working. Somebody, if it's not Madera County, somebody else will want us. But I mean, when you look at we said $5 million. I'm the treasurer. It's been $4.9 million that we have spent in services and not 1 cent in admin fees. All of us have done it for free, except 3 employees that are here that drive vehicles, write up vouchers, and we pay for it all. We pay workman's comp. We pay their vacation. We pay everything. That's 3 employees the county has had a free ride for since 2013. And Brett, thank you for reaching out for the proclamation. Maybe somebody will realize what we've done. I think the public does. Now it's time for you guys to realize what we've done. Can you name another 501(c) that's given you that much money? And we couldn't have done it without Kirsten Gross. Thank you.
So I had called to close the public comment already, but this will be the.
I'm very sorry. I meant to say something.
This will be the
earlier.
last one.
My name is Renee Montoya. I just kind of want to give you a different perspective a little bit. I moved here a little over 5 years ago, about 6 years ago. I actually did not own an animal. I had them when I was a young child, but I did not have an animal myself. The situation was so bad here, I now have a ton of animals, constantly rescuing. I just took bags of food over to a man that's got kittens and cats everywhere in his front yard. He can't afford to feed them. They're not fixed. I rely on them for help. Again, I wasn't, and I loved animals, but I wasn't involved. Now it's a passion of mine. I feel like it's forced upon me. I go out to I live in the KB Homes, a new development over here in Madera, and it's constant. I see it all the time. I just feel nervous about what will we do without them. I'm scared about that because I really do love them. It's really become part of my life, and I just don't know what we would do without them. You know, I'm afraid for the animals, you know, and whatever issues everybody has, you know, or politics, whatever that is, if we can help the animals, it would just be such a better community. The one thing that I look forward to about Madera is that I wasn't wanting to move to Madera years ago. I lived in Fresno and was happy to be there. I got married and came to Madera, and the one positive is Friends of Madera Animal Shelter. It really helps me to want to be a resident here. So I really ask that you please work with them. Please do something to help them so we can bring the community together instead of dividing it. Please help them. I beg of you to do something to reach out. And not only you, maybe other people here that have an animal and care about them. I think it would really make a big difference in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move to 7B.
Seven E, Water and Natural Resources Department. Groundwater Sustainability Plan updates.
Which one are you on?
7B, we're gonna, we'll just wait until everyone gets on. Oh, no, B as in boy.
7B as in boy, that's why I asked.
Oh,
B as in boy, 7B as in boy.
all right. Excuse me.
Yeah, because that's human resources.
7B, County Administration Department. Hearing to adopt an ordinance adding Chapter 2.27 to Title II of the Madera County Code pertaining to the establishment of the Department of Human Resources to include the civil service exempt department head, classification of Director of Human Resources, and related corresponding amendments, and repeals of certain sections of Chapter 2.24 of Title II pertaining to the Department of County Administration.
Hello, Chairman and members of the board. Regina Garza, your county counsel. At your last Board of Supervisors meeting, this ordinance was introduced, and essentially it reorganizes county administration to pluck out the Human Resources Division and create a new Human Resources Department similar to as utilized in the past. And from that, if this is adopted, it would go into effect 30 days from now, and the selection of a Human Resources Director would be at your board's discretion, and that person would become a department head. If there are no questions about the ordinance, or I'm here to answer any questions about this.
Any questions, County Council? Any public comment regarding item 7B? Seeing none, I'll call close to public comment, bring it back to the board for action.
Yes, I'll move to approve, and with that, I want to make a comment after I get a second.
Motion in a second.
Yeah, the Director of Human Resources is probably one of the more important positions in the county. It's a very important role. It crafts the organization literally from the ground up, with every employee that's hired, with every recruitment process, with the enforcement of our bylaws and employee regulations, working with the bargaining units. It's such an important position. We avoid litigation through HR. We keep in compliance with state and federal laws at every level. Working in conjunction with our county counsel's office, that is such an important role. So it is an entity unto itself and needs to have a really great operation.
Regina, would you, or Eric, would you explain to us why we have to make this change from what we have now?
Yeah, Eric Fleming, County Administrator. The reason we have to make the change, we have to go through this process to convert this position to a board-appointed position from a position that would have typically been hired by the CAO. Yeah.
That's it?
That's it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Public comment has already been open and closed. Madam Clerk?
Call for the vote. Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 3-0, 2 absent.
All right. 7D.
7D, County Administration Department, Human Resources Operations Division, discussion and consideration of approval to amend the classification plan for the County Clerk Elections Department as follows: amending the classification plan by adding the class of Clerk Recorder Elections Education and Outreach Coordinator, setting the salary, designating it as overtime exempt, and directing HR to amend the position, and authorizing the Human Resources Operations Division to amend the salary resolution schedule of positions.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Michelle May reporting on behalf of Administration Human Resources. So this item is presented before you. The Civil Service Commission has already approved this item last month, which is part of our typical process. So that step has been done, and this particular classification is actually required due to a legal mandate for the County Clerk Elections Office to have an individual employee who's dedicated to the outreach and to provide education to the public on the Voters' Choice Act. So this particular position is being recommended for your consideration to add that to our classification plan. It's a single incumbent position, and it would be located within the County Clerk Organization Department. And if you have any questions, I am happy to take them.
Any questions? See none. Any public comment regarding this item? See none, I'll call close to the public comment.
Move to approve items 1 through 6.
You have a second?
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Call for the vote. Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 3-0, 2 absent.
Thank you.
Do we need to do the public hearings? No, okay, let's go into 7E to
7E, Water and Natural Resources Department, Groundwater Sustainability Plan updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stephanie Anagnuson, Director of Water and Natural Resources. So we've been doing highlights presentations with updates on each groundwater sustainability plan. Last month we did Madera, this month we're doing Chowchilla, and next month it will be the Delta Mendota. So the Chowchilla Subbasin has 4 GSAs. We're preparing 1 GSP. David's Engineering is the consulting engineer for this project. The total subbasin is 146,000 acres. Within the subbasin, the county GSA makes up 45,000 acres, 37,000 of which is irrigated. We have divided into an east and west management zone within the Chowchilla Subbasin. One difference between this subbasin and the Madera Subbasin is that in the Madera Subbasin, there is a large swath of unirrigated land, roughly half of the county GSA. Here in Chowchilla, we're much closer to mostly irrigated. Here is a table that shows you acreage for each of the 4 entities, plus Sierra Vista, which is a mutual water company within Madera County and Merced County. It's 3,800 acres. And then you can see how the east and the west split up. So much like the Madera subbasin, within the Chowchilla subbasin, we've seen a significant change in land use and in farming over time. The numbers that are in red are the biggest places for difference, but one thing we've seen is going from 12,000 acres in 1989 to 53,000 acres in 2015. We've seen idle land that is temporarily idled, the 19,000 acres going into permanent production. That's the 19,000 going down to 1,000. And then similarly, a decrease in pasture and alfalfa from 35,000 to 19,000. So while urban water use is relatively minor, we've seen a fairly significant increase in the evapotranspiration of applied water, the ETAW, from about 2 acre-feet to 2.66 acre-feet per acre. So we do have a shortage. Without Sigma, we're looking at about 115,000 acre-feet per year of shortage. And I'll show you how we're going to make up for that shortfall, but we do have a draft out for comment now until November, and that's the link if you'd like to make a comment. The GSP in Chapter 4 details projects and management actions to make up for the shortfall. You can see the green striped area is the demand reduction. This is the 2% for the first 5 years, and then going up to 6% of the total amount of demand being reduced, plus projects, and that's the 52,000 acres. Per your board's direction, we have been as aggressive as we could be with finding water. That includes water from the bypass, and you can see that we're estimating an average annual benefit of around 20,000 acre-feet. That means you're taking a big gulp, though, because that's not every year. That's 70,000 to 80,000 acre-feet, roughly a third of those years. So we have modeled recharge along the bypass, recharge in the east area, irrigating with surface water in the east, providing we can get it, and demand reduction. And I'll just put out that the GSP has an annual report, which is due this coming April. It also has to be updated every 5 years. If there were significant changes, like more water became available and we could decrease demand reduction, or less water became available and we had to increase demand reduction, we can update the plan at any time. I have the actual text from Chapter 4 where we talk about demand reduction on this slide. Our strategy, per your board's direction, is to find a glide path to gradually phase in demand management between now and 2040. With the 2% of the total demand reduction for the first 5 years and a cumulative reduction of 10% at the end of 5 years, and then 6% afterwards. I will put out these are numbers used for modeling, but it is pretty clear that there will need to be demand reduction within the county GSA. However, we are adaptive and we can change if more water is found to be available. In terms of how we get our demand management, we have basically 3 ways. One is we could give an allocation, a second one is we could do a water market, and a third one is we could buy land and rest it or take it permanently out of production. So those are our 3 options. People who think deeply about these topics encourage us to keep all of our options on the table right now and not to choose one which may be limiting and result in more economic harm than is necessary. In terms of groundwater impacts, the county especially needs time to transition. And so what we are going to see during that time is groundwater levels continue to decrease. And we're thinking this is somewhere in the 10 to 40 feet. But you will see from the hydrograph that levels after projects are implemented are bumped back up. So without the groundwater sustainability plan, you would see groundwater levels drop as much as 200 feet in that sustainability period of 2040 to 2090. With the GSP, we're seeing what's probably a temporary drop, but recovery and stabilization. We are having active discussions about what groundwater mitigation or domestic well mitigation might look like. We had a domestic well ad hoc that met, that's ad hoc for the advisory committee. What we came away with there is a data gap in terms of all of the domestic wells within the county. We have about 10 years of really good records here within the county. DWR has a well completion database. We need to reconcile those two. Those are not the same data set, and then see if there's other wells that are either older and abandoned, older and destroyed, or older and still being used that would need to go into our database. We have talked pretty explicitly in the name of transparency about upcoming costs. One of those costs is the flood control agency. We are heavily modeling recharge basins. I think we have 22,000 acres between the Madera and the Chowchilla subbasins that's either temporarily used for recharge or permanently. Most of that water is going through facilities that our flood control agency is responsible for maintaining. And those are facilities that are no longer in compliance according to the Army Corps or DWR. So that is a pending challenge. You're going to see the GSA fee come before you today. And then I just want to flag that projects, that means actually purchasing water, permitting for getting temporary urgency permits for water off the bypass, putting in infrastructure, that's all part of project fees, and that's not where we are right now in 2019. It will be where we are soon, but not right now. And then this delightful slide is a small list of our department responsibilities and the sorts of things that we're working on right now. I'm the plan manager for the Madera Subbasin. We have a substantial amount of grant administration that goes along with that. We are in the middle of choosing a data management system. This is required by law to be used in subbasins. We have an annual report contract coming up that we're going to need to execute. We'll have to turn in a report April 1st, even though we turn in the plan January 31st, and it seems like that's only 2 months. We also have a grant for groundwater monitoring wells. So I won't go through this, but needless to say, we now have 3 people doing a tremendous amount of work. So I'd be glad to take your questions on the Chowchilla, GSP, or other Sigma questions right now.
I'll just make a quick comment. Wow. You have a huge task, and you've done extremely well with it, with the 3 people you have in your department. And balance of the groundwater depletion is going to take time. It takes time. If you don't do it in a gradual fashion, the economic damage would be so untenable that we would lose the ability to control the circumstances anyway. It would be beyond fixing, I think, at that point. The economics goes hand in hand with this circumstance. It takes money to do what we're doing, and at the same time, the money is produced by the industry that we have that creates that opportunity. So I really appreciate the balance that you've achieved with the communications that have occurred with all the stakeholders, the DACs, the farming interests, the cities, everybody that's input into this. It's been a very important process, and we've come to this point not as a result of dictatorship, but as a result of collaboration and communication, which is the critical element of getting really good plans together, is having all the stakeholders inputting into the plans. And I think that's really occurred here, and I commend you for doing a very difficult job.
Thank you.
All my questions that usually go with Sigma, you are capturing them now, just the interface, how it all works. So Appreciate that. Is there any public comment on this plan update? See none, I'll call, oh.
I'm Mark Hudson. I'm a farmer in Chowchilla, and I commend Stephanie on all the work she's doing. She keeps us all not fighting. You know, I just want you guys to remember that, you know, in the Red Top area, we had a big problem. Still's a problem, but it's less of a problem. It's the Triangle T, Red Top subsidence issue. And the company there, Hancock, put aside land, was able to put 40,000 acre feet in 2017. The water levels came up, subsidence reduced. So there's a huge success story to build on in this county already. And so the trick is to use the farmers and their ability to get things done. We love projects, we love to help. If there's, like Jack was saying, if there's an overreach, we fix it. You know, it's the whole story of society. Society comes in, they log too many trees, what do? We plant more trees. So we have here a huge opportunity. It's like with irrigated land, with CV salts, with flood control, with Sigma. Madera's blessed. We have a lot of water coming through here. We just have to learn to reclaim the floodplains, put it back on the ground, and recharge the aquifer like Jack wants to do, and start pumping shallow water again instead of going deep water and causing subsidence. Right. So I guess the main thing is keep the farmers involved, because they're the ones that can do it quickly, just like we did at Red Top, efficiently, and they have fun doing it. Right. It's just finding that mechanism, which we haven't found yet, to incentivize people tearing out trees to say, well, I'm going to leave out some more land for recharge. There's a lot of management, education that has to go on. It's a whole new way of managing farming. It's a whole new way of managing water. Right. So it takes time. Right. And 5 years is pretty tough. Yeah. But I'm very positive, because there's already examples in the county that this has happened. I know Chowchilla is very aggressive in recharging, doing a great job recharging off the Brenda and the Ash this year. And that's something that wasn't done before. We just go right on out to the ocean. Right. So there's a lot of work to do, but please keep the farmers involved, and the RCD, the white area growers, just the Farm Bureau. We'll figure it out. We'll work with you guys to figure it out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, thanks for walking the walk. You've led the way in this, and that's very important.
Now I'm retired every day Saturday.
I don't know how you do
Public
that.
comment on the plan update.
Gentlemen, would you give me a moment again?
Absolutely. Do you have another
I
straw?
think you've just heard two people come up here with a lot of information that is exactly correct. We have reached a point in our aquifer in Madera County where we have no other choice than to do something, and we can't do it tomorrow or the next day. It's to start today. Start today. We need to set limits on pumping. If they don't use surface water, we have got to put those limits in there, even if it hurts people. Now, some of those people are not going to be happy with that, but we have got to do it, and it can't wait until next year or 2040 or whenever. It has to start here today, and here you've got people that know just exactly what we need to do. And that is, we have to have some cheaper water to put in the ground, and put it in now when we've had wet years. We may have a third wet year right now coming up. Now, we've had 2 wet years and we've done virtually nothing with it. Chowchilla Water District has tried desperately and done some good. Some good. Not, you can't even measure it yet, but we know it's there. Now, it's up to you guys to jump aboard full house. If you have to raise the taxes a little bit, let's do it. and do it now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on the plan update? Seeing none, I'll call close to the public comment portion on that. We'll go to 7F.
7F.
We're at now, Jack, on this one.
Water and Natural Resources Department, policy direction on county groundwater sustainability agency fees.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Stephanie Agneson, Director of Water and Natural Resources. I'm here with Kevin Kostick from Raftellus. We're going to give you an update on the proposed GSA fee. In this presentation, we'll review the structure of the fee, schedule update, policy review, a budget, and a few options for moving ahead. I just want to note that because we did receive the largest grant in the state of California for Sigma work for GSP development, that was $5 million, including water monitoring wells. We've been able to put off having this conversation for a while. And just to give credit where credit is due, that was Julia Berry's work to apply for that grant. Let's move to the organizational structure. So the GSAs, there are really three. We're interested in managing them as a whole. There's one for the Madera Subbasin, Chowchilla Subbasin, and Delta Mendota Subbasin. Right now, we're looking at a GSA fee for what we're going to show you for administration and for planning. For anything that is a project that would need to go through a separate 218 process. And that is something we would work on in the next year, but it's not something that's on the table right now. In terms of outreach, since we last met, I've talked about the fee at a number of different places, including Clayton Water District. I've also been asked sort of spontaneously when I've attended other meetings like at Gravelly Ford or Chowchilla Water District to talk through the fee because other water districts are very interested in how we are moving ahead and would like us to step up and be able to purchase and bring in more water and do recharge projects. In terms of the schedule, right now, if we work backwards, we're hoping to adopt GSPs, 3 of them, at the board meeting, 3rd meeting in December. We are proposing bringing this fee ahead on November 12th. We would need to adopt this fee before the GSPs are adopted. That's how the water code reads around this. We do have to do public notice in the paper. We also would have to publish the actual study, the complete study, by October 21st, so in a very few amount of days. We've reviewed funding authority with Deputy County Counsel Mike Linden. Prop 26 exempt fees are defensible with Sigma and with the water code. They are the least costly and least time consuming, but most efficient option and don't necessarily require periodic readoption. Last time, Kevin did a very thorough job of walking you through different ways of assessing fees in terms of whether all acres or irrigated acres or different options, and what was recommended was settling on irrigated acreage. So we have spent some time coming up with what a county GSA budget would need. There are 5 major categories. The requirements that the law, the Sigma, requires us to have, those are regulatory requirements. Professional services, the staff here within the county, administrative costs, and a contingency. We're allowed to have what's called a prudent reserve. So the budget comes out around $2.4 million. This is a combination of staff costs. That's for 5 staff, 2 additional positions to what we have now, the director, deputy director, and an analyst. And we would have someone who specialized in water resources planning, or maybe a water resource specialist, as well as a program assistant. We have professional services, which is hiring the engineering services we need in order to get the projects off the ground. That includes managing the CBP contract, project-based studies, which would include recharge analysis for the county on where to put the basins and what plumbing would be needed to get the water to them. Demand management structures, which is what Mark was referring to, what incentive structure is going to be appealing to farmers. And I've applied for a grant for that as well. Monitoring wells have to be read twice a year, and then we have some legal services. The regulatory requirements are substantial. Those include installing new monitoring wells every year, probably for the first 5 years, a data management system, Landsat technology to do water use estimates, costs for our annual reports, and we're seeing costs around the Central Valley for that annual report coming in around $100,000. We don't have to pay the entirety of that. We might share based on acreage or might split it equally down the middle, but there are annual reports for all of the subbasins that we're in, and then there's the 5-year updates for the plan, which is a substantial effort. And we've found a way to annualize those costs, so we're not waiting until year 5 to fund them. So that's what the budget looks like.
And I want to point out, because it says GSA budget, but this wouldn't be for each individual GSA. It's just overarching county GSA that deals in all 3 different, so it's not 2.4 for each different one.
That's right. Thank you for
I just wanted to
clarifying.
clarify
This
that.
is the 3 GSAs for the county in one budget.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to pass it to Kevin so he can talk through the data analysis and scrubbing.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. Most of our work over the last month since we last met has been about data analysis. It's been a collaboration with my firm, David's Engineering, the county assessor, also Stephanie's department. And I want to say a special thanks to Kim Witten, who's done a lot of work around this. So, we've got a lot of data that has come to us over the years, and we didn't necessarily know Sigma was coming. So we have all this disparate data that we have to aggregate, we have to layer. So we have parcel data, we have groundwater basin boundary data, we have irrigable area within different parcels, and we have to layer this data and then trim it and organize it. And so really what we're trying to get to is a finer scale where we can identify on a parcel basis how much irrigable area is on each parcel in each basin in the county managed areas and so forth. So over the last month, as I mentioned, we've merged all that, the parcel data from the county with land covered data, and then we started organizing it by both subbasin and then by the different categories. So we're looking at irrigated versus non-irrigated land, we're looking at residential versus non-residential land uses, and then we can combine those so that we can actually calculate our fee. So the fee calculation steps, we're merging the data with the GIS data that's available, and then we assign to the following 4 groups. We have irrigated agriculture, which is exactly what it sounds like. We have our grazing rangeland class and any irrigable area within a parcel that's land use is designated as grazing. Then we have residential users, and we have other users. Other is kind of the catch-all for all these other non-residential users. They may include golf courses, hospitals, parks, schools, any commercial uses, think strip malls or gasoline stations. And then we can take the budget that Stephanie presented and we can allocate it between our different user classes. And in this case, we're going to show you 2 options. One where we've allocated a few of the specific line item costs of the GSAs operating to irrigated agriculture and the rest among all the user groups. And then with that known, we can determine our fee per irrigated acreage. And just to reiterate, our residential users, anyone managed under the county GSA that's a residential user in the context of Sigma is a de minimis user and is exempt from the GSA fee that we're discussing. So our first option, there's a table here. We've got our 4 user classes, as I explained: irrigated agriculture, rangeland with any irrigated land, our other classification, our non-residential users, and then our residential use. Then we have the irrigated acres within, now this is total within the 3 subbasins, the GSA, the county GSA managed areas, and then the column to the right is the actual fee. And remember, that's a fee per irrigated acre. So a parcel may be 20 acres in size, it may be 15 acres of which irrigated, and so the fee would be levied against the 15 acres, not the total parcel size of 20 acres. So if we walk through this irrigated area of about 106,000 acres in total, there's a 10% allowance there because data isn't perfect, and we recognize that. And so with all of the trimming and the layering and so on, we know that it's not going to be perfect, and so we make an allowance for that. So we reduce the irrigable area by about 10%. When we take the budget, we divide it by our irrigable area, we get a differentiated fee, that being where the irrigated agricultural users pay a slightly different fee than our other users. So irrigated agriculture and any irrigated land on grazing or rangeland would pay a fee of $23.50 per irrigated acre. And then our other users would pay a fee of $17.75 per irrigated acre. Residential users, again, are exempt. And that fee is, and that's an annual fee per irrigated acre. Okay?
I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned under other, the word golf course came up, and when you consider golf courses, and I'm not beating up on them, but they actually use more water than an agricultural for-profit interest, but they are also for profit. I think it, you know, in a circumstance like that, they should almost be considered irrigated. They should be in parity with the agricultural users. That's just my feeling and thoughts.
Supervisor Rogers, you're actually making the argument for the next slide.
Okay,
So-
good.
So
You're ahead of me.
Right.
She's reading my mind.
So-
This is scary.
So again, this first option, the specific costs for monitoring well installation, data management systems, and for our water use estimates that we're allocating specifically to irrigated agricultural, because we say in the absence of irrigated agriculture, we wouldn't be incurring those costs. Now in the second option, which is a uniform option, we say no, everybody is going to pay equally for the administration and the operations of the GSA. And in that situation, the fee is the same for each user class of $22.50. So you see it's very close to what the first fee for irrigated agriculture, because that's the bulk of the acres under production. So the uniform fee is just slightly lower than that.
Can you give me an idea of what under other than golf courses, what we're talking about irrigated, commercial irrigated projects like nurseries or what?
It really is the catch-all. So if it's in the assessor's database, if it is not coded as agricultural use, residential, or grazing or rangeland, it's really everybody else.
Everybody else that irrigates.
Exactly. So you could think of any sort of commercial use. There's a handful of industrial users as well. You could think of potentially an office park or a strip mall or something of the sort. Schools as well. Parks would be under that.
So those are on much smaller footprints, and would it be just their irrigated portion of their footprint?
Right.
So if you had a large manufacturer, but they only had like a strip of grass, that's all that gets
Correct.
cut out for it?
Correct.
Okay.
So yeah, in that example, you might have 10, 20, 30 acres, but you're landscape
0.5.
irrigating half an acre or an acre. So we're going to capture that.
That's
But
also an incentive for some businesses maybe to cut back on their irrigated areas when it's strictly decor, as it were.
right. Yes. So those are the two options that we have for your consideration. Happy to have additional discussion on both of them, but we wanted to tell you what our perceived next steps are, which, as Stephanie mentioned, we're on a pretty tight timeline with the adoption of the GSP in December. And what we need to do is document the GSA fee by the 21st of October, if we were to make a decision. We need to notice everyone in the period between publishing the report and when the fee would be considered for adoption next month, the meeting on the 12th, which is our tentative date. And then at that point, the GSA fee would be adopted, and then the GSP could be adopted the following month in December.
And then in terms of the acts of, if there's a year that they're rip trees and aren't putting any in or fallow that land, it comes out and they don't pay the fee for it that year, or as long as there's no irrigated ag on it. And then also if, you know, a 5-acre portion of a parcel was for their house, that would be excluded from it. Is that, as that portion being non-de minimis?
Can you explain the last example? Would you say a residential?
So if they're 20-acre parcel, 5 acres of it is their house and residential area, or 2 acres, whatever that lot size is, that would be excluded from the overall irrigated portion?
I guess, so the ultimate driver is how the land, what the land use is designated by the county. So if it was designated as residential, it would be exempt from the top, from the start. If it was designated as a different land use but had a home on it, then presumably it would be levied the fee.
If it's AR, you've got mixed uses. And so how are you gonna be able to, like he said, exclude the residence area from the calculation? Matt, am I right on mixed uses? I think it's a good conversation to have now rather than later.
Coming from the back
Not to
40
preempt,
right
Matt, we're using data from the assessor's database, though,
Okay.
to be clear. And the assessor provided tons of additional information where we had something that, for example, was grazing land and coded as that, but had some irrigated acreage, so that we're really being precise in the actual irrigated part.
Well, sure, yeah, and you're able to through the assessor's roles.
Right.
They also have, if you have a residence on a parcel and you're the owner, an occupier of that residence, you can get an exemption from $7,000. That's the homeowner's exemption you apply for. So if that were the case, would we apply that area as exempt?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know off the top of my head.
I think we should just, if we're applying an equitable approach, so if
They're residences.
the building on an industrial parcel that would take up that portion, you just do the irrigated area, then the same should apply to ag land, that if you have a structure or residence that's viewed as de minimis, that should be excluded from the overall.
Yeah, to be equitable, I agree with Supervisor Frazier that.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Stephanie, do you have enough staff to implement this plan? It seems pretty complicated.
So currently, I do not have enough staff to implement the plan. And yes, it is complicated. But so this raises our staff from 3 to 5. Which
will do it, huh?
I sure hope so.
Matt, let's have Matt address the issue of multiple land use.
Sure. So if I recall, you're speaking on if you have an ag AR5 and you've got, 3 acres in production you got a 1 acre home site. Certainly, I think we'd be looking and working through that intricacies of those certain specifications where we have that situation occurring, where we have a residential parcel. I would tell you, though, I think on that front, right, you got a 40-acre ag piece that is irrigated and ag zoned and planned that could be utilized entirely for ag. It can get a little tricky there and a little sticky on carving out a specific area of that
For a
parcel.
house. Yeah. But we do allow residences on even those lands.
Yes, absolutely. Every zone district outside of open space or commercial, industrial does allow a residence. And even in commercial, you are allowed a residence with an entitlement application through our shop. So, but ag, and we allow multiple. We allow 2 homes on an ag.
If I'm not mistaken, though, in the assessor's role, the measurements and the specifics of those parcels are carved out in the assessor's role. And I know I'm not mistaken because I did that for 4 years. So what they do is the plot of everything that's on that parcel is laid out right there. So if you have a residence and you'll see where the residence sits, where the irrigation sits versus the residence, it's pretty easy to make a small calculation on that from that parcel. And the assessor can probably, when they're in the field in the future, as we go through this process and perfect it and get it down to a gnat's whisker, the assessor, when the appraiser goes into the field and they measure those amenities that are on the property and lay them out in the plot, that can be one of the questions that they ask. Where are your boundaries for your residential property? Where are they? Where have you established that this is the residence and this is the parcel? I think it's important to be equitable. We're allowing businesses on the catch-all to carve out space. We're allowing residences to be exempt altogether. That's an important component for the farmer as well.
And if it's just available for irrigated, like, what if a recharge basin was built? Does that get taken out of the irrigated?
Yeah, we shouldn't be punitive on recharge.
Right, especially if we're trying to entice or enhance that, we wouldn't want to, then you have to continue to pay for it as irrigated land.
So I agree, and it wouldn't really be irrigated ag at that point, right?
I just didn't know if it was just going based on the assessor's role.
So we would use whatever the current database is, so it could reflect current land use.
Just ability to do that.
I just had another thought too, is, when we allow exemptions on the home and for the homeowner is responsible to come in and file that exemption so they can receive it. And I think it puts a good onus on the owners of these parcels to come in and say, hey, I've got a recharge basin here. This isn't irrigated, and to make sure that everyone understands they can bring this information to us, and it'll be removed if it's legitimate.
So as long as there's a process for it, I think it's important.
We need a process for that, just like we have with the assessor's office.
And so I think we could use the assessor's process.
I think so as well.
As well.
We don't need to do 2. We've got that process right there. When a house is built, the assessor receives a plot map and a basic rendering of what is built on that property. And they receive that as a part of the process. Am I correct, Matt?
Yeah, that is correct. So they have access not only to our permit tracking system that can grab those permits, but they do get copies of the issued permits, and that's where that tax.
That's all in Posse.
Yep.
So your office should have Posse available to it to go into the system, and they should receive a copy of the map for every parcel, just like everybody else, and that should be part of the process, the database that goes into that. Okay. Continue on with, did you have anything else to present?
Yes, so for today, what we wanted to get your feedback, if you're comfortable with either of these options to move forward, because we need to notice.
I think you're hearing the staff, that the direction to staff would be the equitable approach, the equal fee, the equitable approach to removing actual residential land, and I think that's what I heard from my colleague, and so I think that's the direction to staff at this point. We don't need a motion on that, do we? Oh, thank you, Counselor. Okay, item 7G then. Oh, wait, pardon me. Any input from the public on this item 7F? Sir Mark.
Mark Hudson, Farmer Chowchilla. The history of the GSAs and GSPs has been pretty rapid. Short time frames to develop the GSA structure, and then a real short time frame to form the GSP. And so the amount of projects that have been presented is fairly thumbnail sketch. It's not specific. As a farmer, $28 an acre plus, I'd like to know how much water does that say right now? And it sounds like it's going to go to staff and the
Say 28, wasn't it 22? 22.
22.
Yeah.
I was sitting far back, so I didn't see it right.
That's okay.
So it already came down to $6.
And that's a good
since
question.
you're not
You're saving money already. How do you like
Well,
that?
so for $2.4 million, you know, and this is just going back to the Triangle T example, where you have $2.4 million, and let's say you incentivize farmers, $500 an acre, just to divert land to another use, which is recharge either basins, which is probably not going to be, probably just recharge areas. That's 4,800 acres right off the bat. If you have a recharge level of 0.3 acre feet per day, Triangle T was 0.5, that is 1,400 plus acre feet per day. If you have a water season of 120 days, that's 172,000 acre feet you're able to divert to the groundwater example. So the issue here, and this is where the discussions have to come in with the farmers, is the county has their way of thinking, which is fulfill the regulatory responsibilities the state is putting on them in a rapid manner. I mean, you guys have like no time at all. But that's the way it's been. The state has just been pushing us and pushing us and pushing us. So we have to be careful about, if you're going to ask the farmers to put in 25, can I use 25?
22.
22 bucks an acre.
If you're going to ask them for $22, they're going to say, well, where's the water? But it's going to a structure. So there's going to probably be another fee in order to divert more land. So how do we assess farmers to where they can participate in solving the problem cheaply? Stephanie knows how much I don't like engineers, but cheaply. I know you're a geologist. And quickly, and get the farmers to participate with it.
Similar to the way Triangle T did.
Kind of, sort of.
Yes,
Yeah.
we are.
So, and with the flood issues that we have, you know, being able to divert that flood water on farmland, that's a great marriage of ideas there. So this is the thing we want to keep open as farmers is how do we keep talking instead of, you know, the consultants, the engineers saying this is what you got to do. There's always a way to skin a cat. I shouldn't have said that in today's meeting. I am so sorry. I know.
That's a really mean cat, right?
I was here earlier. So just to keep that in mind as we go forward, to keep the conversation going with the farmers and the amount of money being spent, I always think if that $2.4 million is spent the first year on land diversion to get it going, and then the next year is put on to the regulatory process, when do you spend that money? How do you build into it? All those things. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, sir.
May I have one last word? I'd like to ask this board to put some words behind this. We need to establish a guideline, and I would recommend that we base it on Highway 99, maybe our airports or cities are mostly along that line because that's the place that the railroads are. We must restore our aquifer up to a point, And I'm going to suggest that you put as an achievable goal, not immediately tomorrow, but as every time we have a little extra water, get it into the ground and get it up to 100 feet above the Mendota level. That's basically the aquifer level. And that puts it within the reach of our poor people who can't afford to drill deep wells, but they can afford 200 feet or less. So set a guideline along Highway 99 as a goal to reach. And when we reach it, fine, then you might be able to allow people to pump a little more. But in the meantime, put limits on pumping from deep wells. It's got to be done, and you are the people that have the authority to start it. I'm going to go back to my boards, and I'm still on as an inactive member. I can't run a meeting anymore. So, but I'm going to go back to them, and we're going to come up with the same recommendation that I make to you. And that's set 100-foot water level minimum as a goal at the Highway 99 level, which is the airports and the cities along the Highway 99. Now, you can do it. Madera County can do it. Otherwise, Ryan Jacobson is going to be in Madera County, and he's going to make us the bellwether of the entire valley. And we're asking him to come here, and I think he will, and it's going to embarrass Madera County a little bit, but it's also going to put the fire into you, and you have the fire ability. And we don't have to do it tomorrow. We have to do it now. We can't wait much longer because we're already sucking the pond dry. The soup bowl is empty. We can't go any deeper. We cannot go any deeper. It must not go any further down. So do your job, boys. Do it.
Thank you, Jack. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll call close to the public comment portion of it. And Mark, I agree. I always want to see it being projects to begin with, and there will be other fees to be able to create those projects. This was just another example of legislation at the state creating more government at the local level, and to be able to manage all three of those areas is Herculean undertaking, and this is where we have to get it and trying to make it the most equitable as we possibly can. So I agree. I want to see projects out of it, and there will be more to come in terms of getting us out of this, of how to pay for those projects. We'll go after grants wherever we possibly can. I know in working in the Midwest on some of their levee breaks, they put the farmers to work. They had the equipment out there. We brought a article about that here because there's nothing that the American farmer hasn't been able to figure out. It doesn't matter how many pieces of legislation, how many regulations, weather, everything, and still the American farmer persists and figures out the most efficient, best way to do things. And there's no way that we can get out of this issue without the farmers here in Madera County. So I appreciate your words on that as well. Is there any other discussion from the board? If
I iterated what appeared to be the consensus before you, after you left, was that the equity plan where the cost was the same across the board and the applied residential exemption. Yep. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
And this will be coming back on November 12th, and will that be when we have it to vote on it? Okay, so November 12th will be the vote on that. So mark your calendars. 7G.
7G, Water and Natural Resources Department, discussion and consideration of approval of new rules and structure for the Groundwater Sustainability Agency Advisory Committee.
Stephanie Agneson, Director of Water and Natural Resources. I have a short presentation for your consideration. So as you know, we have an advisory committee for the county GSAs only. It originally was meeting quarterly in 2018 and is now meeting bi-monthly, plus with enough special meetings so that it's pretty much every month. They have been providing key input into the development of our groundwater sustainability plans. Our requirements for them are a time commitment as well as living or working in the subbasin and being 18 years of age and a citizen. The history, briefly, you'll recall in 2017, your direction to Julia was to establish these advisory committees. There were 3 separate committees originally. We found that there was a consistent content that we were presenting to all 3, so they were combined for this year into one large committee. And now I'm bringing a question of whether we need a new structure in some way to your attention. So there's a couple key elements proposed for 2020. The bi-monthly meetings seem to work pretty well. They have been giving feedback on the GSP development. Their mission is shifting to feedback on the actual implementation of the GSPs, and that's where we get into the projects. They also serve a dual role as they come and learn, and then they serve as water ambassadors in their own community. So here is a diagram of the current advisory structure. This is what happened when we combined 3 committees into one. So in the Madera Subbasin, we have 3 ag representatives, 1 residential rep, 1 water system, 2 DAC reps, and then 2 alternates. In the Chowchilla Subbasin, we have 2 ag reps, 2 residential reps, and 2 alternates. And in the Delta Mendota, we have 1 ag rep, 1 DAC rep, and 1 alternate. So that's the current committee. It is a big group. As you know, boards are sometimes easier to work with as they are 5 or 7 or 9, and this is 13. So it's a sizable group. So we're going to look at a couple different options for next year, and of course, keeping the existing structure is always an option. So the first option, we shrink the committee and it goes to 7 with an ag, a res, and a DAC representative for the Madera and the Chowchilla subbasins, and then 1 Delta Mendota rep. So that's where the 7 comes from. This is a smaller group. It might be easier to work with in terms of the numbers. One thing that we are seeing is that ag can't really be painted with a broad brush. There's people with permanent crops, people with row crops, there are dairies and people with other livestock issues as well as rangeland. So you'll see as we kind of move ahead how that can play out. The second option is from my former employer in the Santa Clarita area. They simply organize by the type of pumper you are, whether you're small, meaning de minimis, medium, that could be farming or industrial or commercial, or large, meaning a big agricultural company. So that's one option. Option 3 has more discrete categories for ag, so 1 irrigated ag seat, a rangeland seat, and a livestock seat. It also has a residential seat and someone on a well, and then someone who is actually on a water system. It could have a business seat. That could be a place for the mutual water companies. We have 2 that are within the GSAs. Or it could be a seat for some of the new development. We also have a DAC seat and then alternates at large. And then this is where I thought, well, maybe I can just use math to solve my problem. So I'm representing land use as percents. So roughly 36% of the county GSA is rangeland, so I assign that to 4 seats. Irrigated permanent crops are about the same amount, so they also got 4 seats. Row crops, that includes dairies, 2 seats, and then a residential seat. So that is one way to do it. And then during the last advisory committee meeting, Greg and I were sort of scribbling notes on an additional structure. So this is 1 ag permanent crop seat, 1 ag non-permanent crop seat, and then 1 residential / DAC seat for the Madera Subbasin. A similar arrangement for Chowchilla. The Delta Mendota would just have 1 seat, and then we have additional categories at the bottom, including a DAC seat, a disadvantaged ag seat, livestock, and a community water system. So now that I've given you too many options.
Hooray.
Yes, so what we would like is some guidance on which structure might be appealing, and I know that there's a fair amount of people who'd like to give some feedback as well. If we choose a structure, we can open up for applications, and I would suggest having everybody apply again, so we're not rolling over people who were there for 2 years. If you want to be in, you need to fill out your very short form and put your name in. And then we can review the applications with the staff committee and bring you some proposed appointments in January. Would you like me to go back to any of the diagrams?
No. Why were we needing to change it? Because a lot of them, they still have, there's not going to be any of those that are going to be, that aren't going to have their own challenges and complexities. So if we have a structure, is the structure not working, or is...
I think the structure has resulted in some recommendations for your board. I think it has an optic of being dominated by ag, which is not good in a time of SGMA where we're supposed to be listening equally to all beneficial user types, including disadvantaged communities, including non-disadvantaged communities, and public water and private water systems. So I think the current committee has some optical issues that could be addressed with some restructuring.
Yeah.
Stephanie, what do you recommend? You've been working on that problem for a long time.
Well, not on the restructuring problem, but thank you. I think that option 5 is potentially pretty helpful. I think that what it does is it makes types of agriculture have seats rather than kind of assuming that someone who grows almonds is able to equally represent dairymen. So I would go with something like probably structure 5. If there are no thoughts, I know there's comments as well from the public.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yeah, I'll hold my comments.
Okay. Let's open public comment now to hear from the public on this item.
Good morning. Phil Jansen, I'm president of the Madera Ag Water Association. We are a nonprofit that has come together to represent farmers in the Madera County wide area. We've been very involved in the process right from the start. I want to thank Stephanie and her department and the staff time and everything that the advisory committee has done to this point. We just have a few thoughts as we look at changing the structure of the advisory committee. We want to make sure it reflects where the impact is going to be, so that there is, we know it's going to be significant impact. We want to make sure that the advisory committee reflects where that impact is going to be. We understand and we know we need a representative from all members of the community. Everybody that has a seat at the table needs to be represented. Disadvantaged community, residential, ag, groundwater pumpers, everybody needs to be represented, but we need to consider that this is going to have a major impact on our farmers. We know we're in overdraft. We know we're going to have to bring in new water. We're going to have to recharge. We're going to have to significantly reduce our demand in the county. And that demand reduction is going to come from farmers. That money to pay for all that is going to come from farmers. We need to understand that the farmers need to be represented significantly at the table. I'm kind of condensing my points here.
Well taken.
We want to make sure that, like I said, that the whoever's at the table is representing those impacted. We, as a body, MAWA would suggest option 1, but we would like to see an addition of 1 ag seat into the Chowchilla and 1 ag seat from the Madera Subbasin. We think this would ensure that ag has proper representation along with all the other people that are going to be impacted by Sigma. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. I know we're still in public comment, if you want to.
I have 3 letters for public comment. I just
okay.
wanted to make sure that I had noted. We do have a letter from the Farm Bureau. We have a letter from MAWA, which Phil spoke to, and we have a letter from McCormick Barstow, which asks for an additional seat in terms of representation of new growth areas. So we have that public comment, sorry.
Oh, no problem. Yeah. Okay, we're still in public comment, so we'll take some of those after.
Good morning, supervisors. Madeline Harris from Leadership Council. I wanted to put some more thought than usual into my comments today, so I'm kind of going to read them because I wrote them out beforehand. But our organization and community partners from across the Madera Subbasin are really grateful for Stephanie and the department's leadership in looking at restructuring the advisory committee. Particularly because in a critically overdrafted subbasin where 95% of all groundwater extraction is for the purpose of irrigation, we have seen in our involvement at the advisory committee that the personal economic interests of an advisory committee comprised with a lot of irrigators are actually in direct conflict with groundwater sustainability. And we've seen this as a challenge when conversations regarding what is inevitable demand reduction arise in the advisory committee, as well as when strategies for funding the administrative costs of the GSA have come up. And we believe that an advisory committee that is comprised in equal parts of farmers, residential representatives, and representatives from disadvantaged communities is both more compliant with SGMA's requirements to equitably consider the interests of all beneficial users and to prioritize drinking water as the highest use of water. It is also balanced enough to promote more sound policy recommendations to the board for the purpose of achieving sustainability. So for all these reasons, a more balanced committee would ensure better compliance with state law and may actually make the GSA's very difficult job a little bit easier. So we support restructuring the advisory committee in accordance with option 1, which would allow for a residential representative, a DAC representative, and an agricultural representative from each GSA, with an additional representative at large from Delta Mendota. We also believe that of the options presented today, it would best consider the interests of all beneficial users, and would be composed of enough stakeholder diversity to ensure that Madera County's economy can grow and thrive in a way that also complies with state law and doesn't threaten the human right to water of your constituents. So we ask that you move forward with option number 1 as presented to you in the agenda packets to ensure robust compliance with the law and a good faith effort at meaningfully considering all beneficial users. Thanks. And then I would just like to add actually that, it would, this was mentioned in option number 5, I think, but would also be a good way of balancing the advisory committee to prioritize some disadvantaged small farmers into the agricultural slots as well. So thank you.
Good morning, I think, yes.
My name is Jason Howard. I'm an attorney with McCormick Barstow. I'm here on behalf of Gunner Ranch West, and also just for the limited purposes of today, Valley Children's Hospital. I just want to provide some additional comments to the letter that I believe each of you have in front of you. If you don't have a copy, I have one here that I can provide to you. In keeping with the goal of SIGMA, which is, and for this committee in particular, which is representation of a diversification of interests in the community, and in light of the diversification of the economy in Madera as it continues to evolve, and also in light of the goal of SIGMA to make sure that this advisory committee has members who are willing to engage in their respective communities, and also has been the case in the past with this committee where developers have been involved. I would like to reiterate the request in the letter is that a specific position on the committee be formed that would have a representative from the new growth areas as contemplated under the county's general plan, and specifically those new growth areas that have a specific plan in compliance with the general plan are within the GSA area, and which will rely mostly on groundwater. I will note that developers have been at the meetings since 2018. Gunner Ranch has had a representative at the meetings, although not on the board, since the inception of the committee at each and every meeting. And I believe that having this stakeholder voice on the committee will achieve the goals of having an ambassador to the community and providing feedback to this body. And thank you.
I didn't sign in earlier.
We'll still allow those comments earlier to be part of the record.
I appreciate that. Christina Beckstead again from Madera County Farm Bureau. I wanted to just make a few brief comments. I've provided a copy of my letter to all of you. I also have a few additional copies if anyone from the public would like one with me. Farm Bureau recognizes, as do most, that the majority of the land affected by SIGMA, more specifically the county GSA management practices, will be irrigated land, which in turn trickles down to the communities as illustrated by the economic impact analysis included in the GSPs. Because of this, we strongly encourage that ag be adequately represented on this committee. We agree with the MAWA group in adding 2 additional seats to the proposed structure would meet some of this need, but we also encourage that a livestock seat be added. Livestock, including cattle, which is both dairy and beef, and poultry, are in our top 10 commodities for this last year, actually, I think for the last several years. There's thousands of animals, let's see, there are thousands of livestock animals that we need to be mindful of within this county. We also suggest that the alternates be assigned to each category. So 1 alternate for ag, 1 alternate for the DACs, 1 alternate for residentials. To meet the need requested by Mr. Howard for the developments, we'd suggest that that need could be met with adding an additional staff member from the county, maybe somebody from planning to assist in advising Stephanie, as well as the advisory committee throughout this process. As we just saw, the bulk of the funding that's needed to fund this process is going to come from irrigated agriculture, which AKA is ag land. Based on this, that's almost 80% of the funds will come from agriculture as you look at this $2.4 million budget that's needed just for this component of it, not to mention what will be needed for infrastructure. To quote several members of the advisory committee, we need to avoid taxation without representation. As it stands right now, I'm sorry, that wasn't an ear that was looking at me. As it stands in our letter, we suggested a modified version of option 1, and it's actually now kind of a combination, as I've mentioned, of 1 and 5. But essentially it would result in less members, so about 10 members. And just to reiterate, it would be 2 ags from Madera, 2 ag from Chowchilla, and we'd also suggest that maybe those ag seats be 1 large grower and one small grower, 1 large grower for each of those seats in Madera, 1 DAC from each city or subbasin, and 1 residential from each subbasin, as well as the alternate from the Delta Mendota and the livestock seat. We understand and acknowledge the need for diversity on this committee, as everyone in the county is impacted by this regulation. However, agriculture is the #1 industry in this county, and without it, everyone suffers. I'd like to take a moment to thank you for letting me comment today, as well as your continued efforts through this SIGMA process. I want to specifically thank Stephanie and Agneson for keeping an open mind, an open door, and trying to keep everyone engaged through this process.
Very briefly, if I may, just in response. A staff member, although maybe warranted, does not replace a voice of a stakeholder in the community on the board, on the committee, itself, and doesn't essentially takes away the ability of that individual to voice the concerns of those developers and other participants in new growth areas. To the extent that this board would like a recommendation from the stakeholder that I represent in this instance, I would suggest, I think it's #4 that includes a business component, insofar as Gunner Ranch might be able to apply for that position. Thank you.
I'll sign in this time. Mark Hudson, farmer in Chowchilla. If I understand correctly, residential is exempt, correct?
Yes.
And ag's paying like 75 to 80% of the property. So as a farmer, we know that the $22 is going to go up. And I saw what happened here today, and public opinion is powerful, especially the supervisors. So the votes are with the residential. You know, you guys aren't going to elect it unless you have the residential votes. And so the taxation is going to be who's going to listen to ag when the residential guys are mad. But how do you solve the problem is with ag, with the ag land, with the farmers, with the ability to divert all that water to recreate the the aquifers. Right. So that's where I have a problem with just going, hey, residential is out, it's all on ag and grazing, and too bad to everybody else. But it also creates an opportunity to solve the problem using ag and working with ag to do this. To the DACs and to the disadvantaged communities, I live on a farm. I don't want my well going dry. I don't want Fairmead getting drier. I don't want the ranchos getting drier. But how do we do that? Is we put more water into the recharge area. We reduce our pumping, like Phil was saying. We put aside divert land for recharge. We work together as a community to solve the problem. But it is a fearful thing to maybe be underrepresented on the committee when so much money is involved, and so much money is going to be involved even more. On ag, I just want to remind you guys that the labor rates are going up every year. Right. The diesel, the chemicals, the regulation burden. I mean, it's amazing how much time we spend in meetings. I have to go to meetings all the time just for my licenses. So we have to be careful not to kill ag. And it is a concern that residential is exempt when ag's bearing the biggest part of the burden. So, thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll call close to the public comment, bring it back to the board for action or further discussion. Supervisor Rogers?
Yeah, I recognize the need to have a seat at every table, or a seat for everyone at the table for a policy discussion that affects our county. That's a given. And the optics have to be there, that we are providing that opportunity for everybody to speak. I want to remind everyone that this board, the board that we're talking about, is advisory, and that this board of supervisors is ultimately who has the responsibility for making that decision. But that being said, it's really important to have good information coming from staff and from an advisory. I also want to reiterate the concept that, and I completely understand this because I think it's absolutely right, and that is that those who bear the burden should have a say in the burden and how big it is and what have you. And ag is bearing the burden of this financially. They bear many burdens. And I would also assert that when we characterize farming, the majority of the farming in Madera County are small family-owned farms, a little over 300 plus acres, the majority. That's becoming an extinct group of people. The majority of our farmers are small farms, considered small farms, and I would say definitely on the disadvantaged line, because when you consider the regulation placed by the state of California on farming, when you consider all of the water institutions, the Eastern Watershed, the compliance issues with every organization out there, I can't think of any industry more disadvantaged than farming. I can't think of any that has more things to comply with. It is overabundant in regulation. And how they keep doing it, I don't know. I've known a number of farmers for years, and they're talking to their children and trying to discourage them from going into the industry because it's such a repressive environment for farming. So I don't want to add another layer of repression to that, and at the same time giving a voice to everyone. Everyone has a voice. Remember, the vote sits right up here. This is where the decision is made. Everyone has an opportunity to talk about the policy before the decision gets made. Everyone. You have that opportunity even today as you step up to the microphone. I would also, I want to add one more thing that I know as a fact. Some of the groups, and I'm not going to call them out, some of the groups that we have opted to have a seat for on the advisory, that seat is empty. It's been empty almost every meeting. So where's the interest? Where's the onus to step up and be a part of the process? So I think when we consider the appointees to these seats, I want to also consider attendance. And if they're going to really be serious about taking that seat, they need to attend the meeting and help make the decision. Don't take the seat from someone who would take that opportunity and input and cares about their future. Don't take that away from them, because if you're going to do that, that's just wrong. So I'd like to forward to staff, this is my thoughts, that we incorporate basically the structure that Christina Beckstead offered up as a thought. And I think that is really where my mind was going originally. I was thinking of option one with 2 additional ag positions, but I like the idea of structuring it such that we have farmers who have permanent crops, not permanent crops, and of course livestock. So that, and they have a completely different world to live in than some of the others. So it's an important thing that they have a say as well.
Might I make a suggestion?
Yes.
So based on the feedback, I'd like to revise what is option 1 and option 5 and come back in November if you can take it.
Yeah, and then look at expanding the residential or adding that business as well, or there is an alternate that can be literally from any any segment, just someone that has an interest in Madera County and water.
In the business, and
Yeah,
I
because with
do
the-
want, oh, sorry,
with-
go ahead.
I'm
Because if
sorry.
we had 11 versus
11
10
versus
is-
10,
yeah.
I think is correct.
And it can be from kind of literally an alternate that can be from any sub-basin, any sector, anything.
Okay. So I will come back November 5th with 2 options, and hopefully one of those will be something we can move ahead with.
Great, thank you so much for the hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, too, I appreciate that. It helps make decisions. I try not to come into these things with a predetermined thought in my mind, just, some analysis, but not a predetermined thought.
The only thing that you're wrong about, pizza is so overly regulated.
Yes.
Just kidding. All right, with that, we're going to go, we'll break for lunch and go, and we'll be back at 1:30. Oh, did you have 6B or A? Let's go with 6B real quick for you. Yeah. We can finish it all. We'll finish it all.
6B, County Administration Department, General Services Division. Hearing to consider adoption of a resolution to accept an offer and authorize the sale of county-owned real property located at 47053 Road 201, O'Neill's, California, and to approve a purchase and sale agreement, escrow instructions, and notice of exemption.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Maria Miranda with General Services. Before you today is the sale of county-owned property located at 47053 Road 201 in O'Neill's. The property is formerly Fire Station Number 17. The station was consolidated with Station 10 back in May, and as such, this location was deemed surplus and no longer needed for county use. The building sits on a .08 acre lot, which was acquired for the Bigelow family back in 1961. In accordance with Government Code, notice of the sale and public bid were posted and published, and the public bidding for the sale closed on September 23rd. The county received 1 offer from Frank and Barbara Bigelow. This was a cash offer of $40,500. The property is being sold as is, and the buyer is to pay all closing costs, escrow costs, etc. Staff is recommending approval of the resolution to accept the offer and approve the purchase and sale agreement. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Are there any questions of Maria? This is a public hearing. Any members of the public wishing to speak on item 6B?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Brian Wagner, attorney for the Bigelow family, here with any questions.
Okay. Any other public comment?
Hi, Madeline Harris from Leadership Council again. I think that this is the same property, if I'm not mistaken, that I had sent an email about a month or 2 ago inquiring just as a follow-up about what the process was for compliance with the Surplus Lands Act. So I just wanted to ask that again because I can't remember what the answer was.
Okay.
Yes,
we'll,
it is.
We'll answer that after public comment is closed. Yeah.
Okay.
Just so. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll call close to the public hearing. Council, did you want to? Are you able to answer? We're good? All right.
Since the public hearing is closed, I'm going to move to approve.
You have a second? We have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Call for the vote. Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 3-0, 1 absent.
6C.
2 absent. 6C.
Thank you.
6C, County Administration Department, General Services Division. Hearing to consider adoption of a resolution for acceptance of the highest bid and authorization to sell real property located in Bass Lake County of Madera, State of California. Approval of offer and agreement to purchase real property and authorize the chairman or his designee to sign the purchase agreement and any subsequent documents regarding the sale.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Maria Miranda here again with General Services. Before your board for consideration is a sale of county-owned real property in Bass Lake. The property is 9.92 acres and located on the east side of Road 432 near Road 331. It has historically been used to store equipment for the sheriff's office. Your board declared its intent to sell the property back on August 20th. The proposed sale price was $599,950. And we also required that any buyer lease back our storage units for a one-year period in order for us to reconstruct the storage at the Oakhurst Sarah substation location. Public bidding for the sale closed on September 9th, and 2 bids were received. The first bid was in the amount of $562,000, and the second bid was in the amount of $610,000. Staff is recommending we enter into a purchase agreement with the highest responsible bidder, which was Fred Fagundis with 4 Bay Farms. Further, as your board is aware, a tentative subdivision map to divide the property into 21 residential lots was approved back in 2014. The buyer does want to proceed with that final subdivision map. As such, he is required to comply with the conditions the county set for that tentative subdivision map. Those conditions will be specified in an improvement agreement, and which will need to be referenced in a covenant to be recorded against the property. So all of these improvements must be done before they can sell a single parcel. There's a 180-day escrow period here. They will have some time for investigations and to complete their construction drawings, and we will anticipate bringing that final map to your board before we close escrow. So with that, I'm available for questions.
These were all sealed bids, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Any other questions? This is a public hearing. Any members of the public wishing to make comment at this time?
Good afternoon, Norman Allender. I'd like to say hello to Monty Pisaresi and those at home. We do agree with the conditions of approval for the project. I'm aware of the person who worked on them at the time. So we're happy to work with your staff to work through this. We believe that the access is an important issue because it's going to make things safer for the community. So with that, I'm here for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll call close to the public hearing.
Move to approve.
A motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second, Madam Clerk?
Call for the vote. Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 3-0, 2 absent.
6A, we'll finish this all out.
6A, Community and Economic Development Department Planning Division. Hearing to consider adoption of a resolution approving increased public facility fees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt Treber, Community Economic Development Director here. I'll be brief but detailed. This is a follow-up item from the October 9th, 2018 board meeting when the board initiated and adopted an increase based on a study completed by Wildan. At that point, the recommendation was to increase the fee based on the adopted fee, the study of 20%. So this is a phased approach. This will be an additional 20% of what that fee justified, what that study justified for a fee. So the important thing is on the single-family dwelling per rooftop, this action would increase that impact fee by $863, and that goes to your countywide public protection, your library, your fire, parks, sheriff patrol, investigation, and general government. We did send this item to the Building Industry Association and several developers in the county as well, and this was a noticed public hearing. It appeared in the newspaper as an 8-page ad. So we are recommending that the board institute a second 20% increase on our capital facility fees based on the 2018 Wildan study. Available for any questions.
So you said it's $800 more. It looks like it's more than that.
It's an $863 increase in a rooftop, per rooftop from our existing. The existing fee is, let me get that for you, $5,181 for a single family, and this fee, this action would take that to $6,044 for a single family dwelling.
But on the, I see in the unincorporated, it goes original from 4,342 to 8,629.
That is what the fee justified in 2018, and that's, we're taking 20% of that justified rate. So that at,
got it.
at
Okay.
the full fee. Yeah, I apologize, sir.
Okay.
So in the backup in the resolution, it shows the
Right.
simply
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
20% increase.
All right, any questions? All right, this is a public hearing. Any members of the public wishing to make comment at this time? Seeing none, I'll call close to the public comment.
Move to approve. And with that, the BIA did do a comment last time when we brought this up, so the president was here and said they were behind that. It's nice when an industry like that understands.
Do we have a second? Madam Clerk?
Call for the vote. Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 3-0, 2 absent.
All right, any supervisor report?
Yeah, Thursday, Henry Perea had a meeting in Fresno, gave an up-to-date with Brian Kelly in Fresno, and he got us up-to-date on the high-speed rail. Friday, Congressman Jim Costa had a meeting in Madera, in the chamber here. His issue was immigration for farm workers, and it was a good meeting, a lot of attendees. It was a good meeting. That's all.
I have nothing to report.
I already got your big news. Sorry, I stole your thunder. And then I, last Thursday, traveled to UC Merced. The governor's office put on an economic summit up there, trying to be transformative as they were taking money from Highway 99. So, all right, with that, I will call this meeting adjourned.